thegearnetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
I'm Cody Love.
I'm TC Cooper.
And together, we are
The Process.
And you're listening to Robbie Vegas' podcast.
And lots. What's up, rock soldiers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas bringing you another episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. I am so happy to be here today with a good buddy of mine, Rex Atkins. Known him for 10 years now, I think. One of my first, if not the first feud that I ever had in the professional wrestling business, and that's going to be a fun conversation. And just so you guys know, we are still sponsored by Death Comes Lifting. Death Comes Lifting is a multimedia health and wellness universe that creates original clothing, content, podcasts, playlists, workouts, and weirdness in order to foster a community in which physical, mental, and spiritual well-being can lift alongside horror, heavy metal, and punk rock culture. We are Fitness for the Misfits. Welcome to the Lifting Dead Army, and make sure you check them out on Patreon as well. So like I said, we're going to have Rex on the show today. We're going to dig into his career, some of his best matches, his podcast, and I'm really looking forward to it. So before we get into that and get Rex on the phone, you know how we do it. Always got to give you guys two sponsors at the beginning of the show. Do you experience digital eye strain from too much blue light exposure from digital screens? Baxter Blue glasses are not your average frames. These blue light lenses filter 80% of the highest energy blue light, eliminating 99% of glare. The past year, we've all been glued to our devices more than ever. I know it's the same for me. I host this podcast. I'm constantly editing and producing it. I've had a lot of things going on with my music, been in front of my screen for that, cutting clips and things like that for my matches. I'm constantly in front of the screen. So I'm feeling this, so I know you guys are feeling it too, especially you all who are like me and put out a lot of content. Our exposure to digital light has soared, and our eyes and our sleep are suffering as a result. Baxter Blue is also a force for good and provides a pair of reading glasses for someone in need for every pair sold. This is eyewear built for our digital age, and Baxter Blue is giving our listeners 10% off your next purchase of blue light, sleep, or kids glasses. Click the link in our show notes for your exclusive discount. This is the sign you've been waiting for to invest in blue light glasses. We know you'll love your Baxters, and we know that you will feel the difference. Alright guys, so thank you for listening to our sponsors. Please check out both Death Comes Lifting and Baxter Blue. You will see the links in the description of the show on Apple, Spotify, whatever you listen to our podcast on, and I thank you very much. And please subscribe to the podcast. It helps us, and it reminds you every week to check out the new episode, which drops every Sunday morning. So I appreciate you guys. I thank you guys. And that's enough rambling coming from me. So let's get Rex on the phone and get this interview rolling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Rex, man, thank you so much for doing the show. I've been meaning to ask you for a while, so this is going to be fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. I'm glad to hear from you. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. I went from when I first started getting into the business, I was around you like every day. So
yeah, it's a little bit of a change.
Actually, I think you were the first person to show me how to do a lockup, a headlock, and take a clothesline.
Where was this? Which promotion? Like which company? Because it was probably at a show, right?
Yeah, it was for BCW, Buffalo Championship Wrestling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like OSPW or BCW, one of those.
Yeah, it was early on. I think I'd maybe been in a ring twice.
Yeah, I've been so removed from the whole like Western New York scene that I don't even know what's going on anymore. I feel like I haven't been there in like a decade, but I'm sure it's been a few years, but it feels like forever.
It's funny because that whole, even talking to you about just that moment feels like forever ago.
Yeah, I'm guessing at the time I was probably 7 years in or something, like somewhere in the middle. But yeah, that's it feels like forever.
So how long have you been in the business now?
I don't know. I started in 2005, so 16 years, like 15, 16 years, something like that. But I mean, obviously the last year and a half is a wash.
Right.
So, I don't know, 14, 15 years probably.
So where did wrestling actually start for you? Like, when did you become such a fan that you were like, I need to do this?
It was probably around like age 7. My cousins were big wrestling fans, and they were all older than me, so I was always trying to do what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they they definitely got me hooked on it. And I remember like buying all the action. Well, I didn't buy them. My parents got me like all the action figures and stuff growing up, and I was super into it. And I remember like collecting like just totes and totes full of these action figures and bringing them to my cousin's house every week. So I'd go there every Sunday and just trying to like show them off. And they're all like, at the time, they're like in their late teens. They don't give a shit, but like, they tried to like play with them and stuff. So entertain me. But yeah, it was definitely them. They got me into it. It was around like the time of Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, like that era.
Oh yeah,
when they were just becoming like top dogs. And I remember before when Asylum asked me that years ago, we're on a long road trip, he goes, when did you get into wrestling? And I told him the era, and he just looks back and he goes, oh, you must have been really cool at school, huh? It was like the downtime of wrestling. It wasn't cool to be into wrestling then.
Yeah, well, until a couple years later when Stone Cold came onto the scene and DX and all that. But yeah, I remember the same thing, because that was the height of it for me too.
That's when you got into wrestling, yeah?
Yeah, same. Like, I remember, well, I was super young when I first got into it, but it was like, the end of like Warrior and Jake the Snake and all those guys. And it was the beginning of
I remember that era, and I remember going to my other cousin's house, and he had all the LJN toys and the big ring and all that stuff, and I remember liking it. And as a kid, I think I had like a George the Animal Steel toy and like a Hogan or something, but right. I wasn't all about it. I was still like, I still had a couple years of like getting into like Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers and stuff like that. And then once I found wrestling, I just dropped everything else, and that was it for the rest of my life, pretty much.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Now, who was your favorite of that time? Like, who was the guy that you couldn't wait to see?
It was Shawn Michaels, number one. Which is funny because Canada, everyone's Bret Hart, right? Like, that's usually your go-to guy. But for some reason, yeah, I think Michaels just the way, because when I started watching, it was right around the Iron Man match. Mm-hmm. So they were really pushing him as like a baby face. And so I just bought into that. But yeah, that was definitely, a heartbreak kid.
When you actually got into the ring, like your first training session, all that stuff, how did that come about for you? How did you discover, how to go about finding training? And then how old were you?
Oh, so that's like, man, it was like start and stop. I was like 14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went to like Neo Spirit shows in Niagara Falls. Mm-hmm. And I was a big fan of like all the guys there. At the time it was like Showtime Eric Young, Danger Boy Derek Wilde, Cody Steele at the time, now Cody Deaner. And they were all like the big guys around that time when I was like 12, 13, and then around 14, I remember Derek Wilde was going to do like some sort of wrestling camp, and it ended up not happening. So that was my first time I was going to get into it. I didn't get to train at all. And then a couple years later, I ended up training. I did a tryout camp with Neo Spirit, and it was like just a night where they just beat the crap out of you for like 2 hours straight, and you have to pass this tryout to get into the wrestling school.
Oh, wow.
And somehow I get through it. I'm like, I think 16 at the time, chubby 16-year-old kid, and I just barely make it through this thing, and then the next month the wrestling gym closes. So I didn't get to train there at that time either. Then maybe about 6 months later, I meet old-time wrestler from Toronto. Well, he's from Hamilton, but he was a big Maple Leaf wrestling guy way back in the day. Nick DiCarlo was his name.
Okay.
I was trying to think of his tag team partner that he was tag champs with. I think he was tag champs with maybe Dominic DiNucci or something like that. But yeah, he came in and he showed me some real basic stuff, just locking up and some basic holds and stuff like that. And then he went to one of the local independent wrestling shows. This is around 2004, and he was not impressed. He called it, Mickey Mouse, and didn't want to have anything to do with the wrestling business, so he just basically left me high and dry. And again, didn't get to become a wrestler that time either. And then just by mistake, not by mistake, but by just chance, Blackjack Phoenix, of all people, was living in my hometown of Crystal Beach, which is right over the border from Buffalo. Yeah. And it's very small town. We're talking like, 1,000, maybe 2,000 people. And for whatever reason, he and his wife was Canadian at the time. She still is, but she's not his wife anymore, is what I mean. But they're living there because she can't get into the States yet or something. So they're just kind of temporarily located close to the border so he can get to work. And he's living there, and he comes into my boxing club, and my boxing coach is like, "Oh, man, I got this kid. He wants to be a wrestler. Can you show him some stuff?" And he kept like saying, like, "No, I'm out of the business." And I don't think Blackjack, at the time, I'm sure he'd admit this himself, at the time, I don't think he was the kind of guy who would, be reputable enough at that age in his life to have a wrestling school. Like he had, he wasn't like, I think he'd been in the business for maybe 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
But he was hurt, and he got in the ring with me, and he started feeling better as time went on, and he showed me a few things, and before you know it, I'm working all the rinky-dink South Buffalo shows for no money, and
You're right.
just getting the reps in, but so he was really the one who broke me into the business at the very beginning. And then since then, it's just been a hodgepodge of different training schools and stuff over the years, CWF and various different places all over Canada. But yeah, that was pretty much the long-winded version of that.
Well, how old were you when you had your first actual match?
Well, I think I'm not going to get in trouble for it now. I was because it was in New York State. I was 17.
Oh, okay.
So I think they just lied and said I was 18. Because I think you have to be 18, right?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we lied. I think I was like 6 months before my 18th birthday or something. But
I'm gonna have to call the athletic commission on this one.
You can call him. That one dude loves me. Not Denim Dan, but the other one. There's one guy that's always in a denim suit. He's not the one that likes me. But there's another guy, the old guy. He loves me, so he'll give me a break.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit here, though. So you said you've been doing it since basically 2005. Who over the years would you say you've learned the most from, as in just being in a match with that person and coming out of it going, wow, I kind of get it now?
Definitely Cody Deaner, as far as because just with repetition, there's not a lot of people. Most of the guys I wrestled like twice a night for weeks on end on like tours and stuff were younger than me. So even though I learned a lot from those matches and figured out my rhythm and like what works and what doesn't, it was more trial and error, kind of self-teaching. But as far as going in there with someone who was much more knowledgeable than me and they showed me things, Diener was the most helpful because there's been a few times like we've had the chance to go on tour together and work each other twice a night for 2-3 weeks at a time.
Oh, wow.
And it's invaluable. Like you just, there's no way you're coming off a tour like that the same worker you were when you left. Like you're just going to know so much more. And also just even watching him was a big help.
Now, you mentioned, going out on tours and things like that. How quickly did you start doing that part?
Not very quick. I spent a lot of years at the beginning, 2005 to about 2011, just kind of being lost in, nothing, nowhere wrestling land. Just that weird thing of like these shows that are like like some reputable guys on the show, but for the most part, it's all either self-taught guys or like half-trained guys or just guys who have been around forever and didn't really leave their town. So it's hard to learn a lot in those situations, and it's hard to even see, like, you're a little bit delusional. You think that, like, you're in the wrestling business, but then years go by and you look back, you're like, oh, all those years I wasn't even technically in the business. I was in, like, the local Buffalo wrestling scene or the Western Ontario wrestling scene. It wasn't like, there was no movers and shakers there. It was just the same thing every month, once a month at each, company. And you wrestle for 10 minutes and you think you're a wrestler, but, it's not until you really get out there and start really trying to at least be working 2-3 times a weekend at the very least, that you really start to learn and meet people and get connections and start breaking out of like the local wrestling scene into like the real wrestling scene.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. As I remember when I first started traveling heavier, I was like, wow, I learned more in the last 3 weeks than I have in X amount of years at the time. And it was all just from going somewhere else,
The tours too, like any young wrestlers, if any of you are listening to this, I would definitely suggest when things are somewhat back to normal, trying to get on any kind of tour that you can, like anything that's more than just a show or two in a row, because it's really difficult to learn week by week. Like it's hard to go to a couple of shows on the weekend and then have 5 days off. Yes. You need to be in the ring every night. And that's like people watch WWE and they're like, how are they so good all the time on TV? It's like, well, these guys have probably been like, they've been wrestling each other every night on house shows. They're working out all the kinks. They're figuring, they're cutting the fat off their match. The things that don't work, they get rid of it. They switch up and they figure out exactly what's great. And then by the time they get it on Raw, it's like polished, right? Nowadays, I don't know how they're doing it with no house shows. Like they must just be really training or really going over stuff because it still looks great. But yeah, you need to be in the ring every night. And that's like, I love it when I come back from a match or I'll see guys come back from a match and they're just super, super pissed. They're hot because something went wrong.
Yeah.
And they're like throwing shit and yelling at each other. And it's like, you don't really get, and sometimes you get like that on a tour, but for the most part, if something goes wrong, you come back and you just laugh it off. It's like, okay, we're going to do it again twice tomorrow. So it's fine. Like, we're going to keep doing this every night. We'll figure it out. But yeah, being in the ring every night is key. Like, that's the best thing, or at least if you don't have that opportunity, being just in a ring, even in a training center every night is helpful.
So do you find yourself at this stage in your career thinking about maybe becoming a trainer or doing seminars or things like that, or is that something that never appealed to you in the business?
Yeah, never. I have no patience. I don't know how I do anything. And like I said, it's all from just doing it. Like I tried to help Chris Thorne run some wrestling classes before, and I'm like trying to show these kids how to, like, even just simple things like taking arm drags or reversing holds and stuff. And I realize I can do it when I'm doing it, but then trying to show them step by step, like even as simple as showing someone how to take a headlock takeover or do one. It's like, I can, if I sit there and go through the steps, I can figure it out, but I don't think about it when I'm doing it. Like, I'm a terrible trainer. I get frustrated really quickly with new trainees because I just do it. Like, I just want them to do it. I'm a terrible teacher, so you know what I would like to do? I would like to help people, because I feel like I'm not a great performer, but I can see what works and what doesn't. So I feel like I could help people maybe with their matches, like putting things together maybe.
Yeah.
Like an agent type role, but I would be a terrible trainer.
Well, I got to say, I remember my first match was a battle royal, and you were in it, and you just peppered me with some right hands, and came back to the locker room, and you literally looked at me and you were like, "Do you still want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And after that, we were friends. Do you remember that?
No, I was just an asshole though. That was in my delusional I'm a veteran stage, and that was probably because I was being influenced by Troy the Boy Buchanan.
It had to be. But we did have a lot of fun back then. I know, like, you know, the first time I wrestled an actual match was in Toronto, and I rode with you up to it, and you know, you always had my back at things like that, and you took me to Pennsylvania for the first time and all that stuff. So it's not like you were just like a complete asshole all the time.
Yeah, and to be honest, too, the people who I am most rough with in the ring are usually the people that I feel somewhat close to, or somewhat like they're my buddy or something. You know what I mean? Or someone I like.
Yeah. That
I know won't complain. You know what I mean? Because they laid in a little more with your buddies. I had two friends like that on Chris Thorne's tours recently, like the last few years, who, one, I worked for an entire year straight, and the other one, I worked for Chris Thorne for the year straight, plus I worked him in his home company in England in that year as well.
Oh, wow.
So we had probably 120 matches that year just with each other.
Wow.
And those guys, they're much younger than I am. MC Hardbody and Liam Carr, if anyone knows them. But yeah, there's nights I just, Hardbody blames me now that he's like crazy because I was just so rough on him. But it wasn't like intentional, like to hurt him.
Yeah.
It was just I trusted him, and I figured they trusted me, and you can go a little extra mile with them.
Right. No, that makes complete sense, because I have a few people that I do the same thing with. Cloudy being one of them, except, you know, he's got a pretty good knockout record because, you know, I don't know, he just throws them forearms, man.
Also, you know who else I was always like that with? I didn't wrestle that many times, but was Matt Milan. He and I, for some reason, every time we wrestled, like, we would pull out, like, I'm talking, like, chop each other in the face, like, not even just a slap, or like, suplex each other into, like, the turnbuckles or something, like, this gross stuff. For some reason, I don't know why I always had that relationship with him. It was, like, a little, like, I think maybe I was a big mark for Finley and Regal. And for some reason, because he was a mat wrestler, I always, and we had decent chemistry, I felt like we could do that stuff, but yeah, we beat each other up quite a bit.
It's funny that you bring him up, because I wanted to ask you about a match that you had with him. You guys did an Iron Man match at VCW.
We did the 30-minute version, because I'm too fat to do the 60.
No, I was there for that. I had a match on that show also, and you guys went hard. And does that stand out to you as like one of your favorite matches still?
Yeah, I think it was like watching it. We actually did a watch along with it a few months ago, and I hadn't seen it in a while. And look, I can watch it now and be like, oh, this is before I was touring really hard, because I could see the little things that weren't routine for me yet. Like, I was a little unpolished, like in my own style.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as clean with like chain wrestling and stuff. And I know that because I could tell my knees were in much better shape. Whereas now I've done so much mat wrestling stuff, and at 300 pounds, it's not. I don't recommend anyone who's overweight joints apart. And that's now, I don't even know if I could chain wrestle now. Like, I'd probably tear something. But yeah, so I could see stuff like that. That really stuck up. But I loved how much we trust each other in that match. And I love, like, the story of it, because we totally ripped off, I think it was, what was the Iron Man match in WCW that we ripped off the finish from? It was like Rick Rude and, was it Steamboat?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think that's the match, yeah, where they're just going hard for that last pin because he gets the upset pin on him, and he's just desperately trying to get it back at the end. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how we built the match around that finish. And so it's very paced out. We had very good pacing, and you could see if you watch the match from a couple months prior with Matt Milan and I versus that one, you could see that we've really found like we've become very comfortable in the ring.
Yeah.
And you could tell that we have a different feel, and we knew that it was like a main event style match, so you could see that our pacing is much different, and we move with much more confidence, and we're not rushing through anything. And there are some parts for me watching it that drag a little bit, mm-hmm. but I think that's also with any long-winded match, it is going to drag at times. But yeah, I really do like that match. It wasn't pretty. It was rough and tough, and it told a story, and it was, I think for where I was in my career at that level, it was definitely the best match I'd had to date. Now looking back on it, I could nitpick everything and say, like, oh, this should be different, this should be different, this should be different. Should have sold the leg longer here, or whatever. But yeah, I really did enjoy that match.
You know, there's something to be said for a match, though, like how you said you're kind of a little bit unpolished when you go back and watch it. But there's like an innocence to that, if that makes sense. Like, when you're watching old matches like that, where it's kind of like, okay, you can tell we're stutter stepping a little, but there's also not too much overthinking because you didn't know as much, so you were just kind of going with the flow, and sometimes that makes for like a magical match out of nowhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also what was great about, like, what you just said in that match is we really didn't, like, we had a little bit of a structure, but Matt Milan and I never really ever talked out what we were going to do, because I knew he was a mat wrestler, so if we ever when it came down to wrestling, we could just work, I hate when people call chain wrestling, like, just get out there and do your tech and just wrestle. Make it look like a shoot and look for the hole.
Right.
Just, give them up at times when it's time to give up, reverse. But yeah, so with him, we never really had to talk much besides maybe a finish and a couple things we were going to try move-wise. But for the most part, that whole match was just on the fly. So I love that because, sometimes you get those little magical moments that you're not expecting.
Yeah, and that was a match that always stuck out to me as that because I was there, so I knew that you guys didn't have 30 minutes of, step by step. And watching it back, even I was being there was going, holy shit. And that match still sticks with me now. Yeah,
I can't remember if it was the promoter, I remember somebody coming up to me and asking me, like, are you guys going to talk? Because they were, like, getting nervous because it was getting close to our match. We really hadn't come near each other in the back. We were just keeping our distance from each other and, like, getting dressed and pacing around, warming up. And he was like, are you guys, I think maybe it was Buck Gunderson or something, but he was like, are you guys going to go over this match? Like, he was getting upset because we're, like, planning everything out.
Well, let me flip this for you now, and we're going to say, who's the worst person you've been in the ring with and had to ride to shows with, and why is it Cyclone Jones?
I love riding with Ish. He and I have had some crappy matches, but we've had good ones too. I always shit on Ish. It's funny, I shit on Ish for the thing that I'm bad for now, which is blowing up. But yeah, he was notorious when I first started wrestling with him for just getting gassed. and he's so funny when he gets gassed because he's like me, where like when he's gassed, he's like he is finished.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I love Ish. He's the best.
I've been in the ring with him so many times, and he's my traveling partner, one of them anyways, and like we've had matches against each other and all different kinds, ladder matches, singles matches, triple threat matches, but we've also been a tag team, and I can't think of any other person that I like to pick on more. So it doesn't matter if we're having a good match or if the match falls apart, I'm still going to tell him that it was shit and it's his fault.
Yeah, well, also because he knows how to take a joke.
Right.
Like, he's not going to get mad at you. He's going to play along with it. And, he's not sensitive. And I hate when people are like, oh, that's how I usually can tell I'm not going to get along with someone. If they can't poke fun of themselves, they take themselves too seriously, that's usually someone I'm not going to be super close with.
Right.
Most of the people, if you just take a look at the people I hang around with, they're all people that, are self-loathing. They'll make fun of their own stuff all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Now, here's a name I'm going to drop and just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Brian Jennings.
Oh, drunk. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, I should have said,
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, Brian's the best. He and I have been friends. We've hated each other and been friends again. And he's a different. It's hard to explain. He's like no one I've ever met. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
his personality. It's almost like he's a character.
Yep.
But he's a real life person. I don't get it, but he's a pleasure to be around. Like every time, and he could be relentlessly making fun of me, and I still love it. Like I can't stop laughing. It's just he's so funny.
Yeah, I think back to all of our old after parties after the BCW shows, and he was a riot. Like you just had to be near him, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be a wrestler. I mean, he's my main trainer. Before I started, doing seminars and traveling and all that stuff, it was just him.
Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, he helped out a lot for those. A few years there when they were running shows down there. Yeah, I guess he would be one of your main trainers.
Yeah, I mean, he's the first one that I give credit to for training me before I, went out and started learning more elsewhere. But before that, it was like random people would come and they'd be like, get in the ring with him and he'll show you some stuff. And you were one of those people a couple times. And it was like, all right, what do you guys know? And then you would show us a couple extra things. And then, and then Brian came in and it became actual classes. And we would do it a couple days a week instead of just before shows,
Yeah, and that's great that he did that too, because back to the patience thing, training new people, it's all about repetition and just doing the same boring stuff over and over and over. And that is just, it's like being when you have kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I have two kids, and I remember when they were babies, just the boredom of laying on the floor with them and living in that boredom of just nothing happening. But you have to be there.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? They're not old enough to talk. They're barely walking. Like, they're just rolling around. And it's just like, like you love them so much, but it's so boring. And that's like how training new trainees is. It's just boredom, and you have to have patience, and you have to have a plan, and I lose interest very quickly when it comes to that stuff. So it's very kind of him to take the time out to show you guys stuff like that and to get all the repetitious stuff out of the way.
Well, let's jump back forward away from the boring stuff then. And you've worked, quite a bit of names in the business. And, who are some that stand out to you that when you got in the ring with them, you were like, this guy's a great guy, and I learned a bunch from him?
Oh, I hate working names.
Do you really?
Yeah, well, it could be the names that worked, but no, like a lot of times it's not even that they're bad dudes or it's that they don't know you. And they don't want to hurt themselves. They don't know if you're any good.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, like, obviously Rene Dupree I became much more close with, so that was easier to work with because, again, he's another guy I can just go out there and call it with, because once you ride with somebody long enough, you become friends. It's not like a name anymore. It's just a dude.
Gotcha.
And that's the problem. Most of the names I've worked, I'm not friends with. They're just guys who were brought in to wrestle me. They don't know me from anyone, and they're just keeping it super basic. And it's always usually just kind of a somewhat okay match. Just put the name over and that's it. That's the kind of thing. I know for me, the most entertaining name I've ever been in the ring with was Scott Steiner, just for the fact of how politically incorrect he was in front of a bunch of children on Easter.
Yeah, I was there.
He was... Yeah, you were there. Okay, so you know the F word he was dropping. No, it wasn't the F-U-C-K word. It was the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just outrageous. And that, for me, was, like, long-lasting memories. I remember Nikolai Volkov not wanting to put me over.
Really?
And, like, politely trying to explain to him, like, how he's, like, 1 million years old, and I'm, like, the top main event guy here, and, like, I need to be put over for next month. And he just was like, I'm a Hall of Famer, I can't lose. And then finally he did the job, but he, like, had to be low-blowed with the foot on the rope and everything. Like, he needed 6 different screw job finishes to lose. Which was hilarious, and he was a lovely man when he, God rest his soul, but he was very difficult to work with in that sense, and he also made me pay for that. As soon as the match started, just socked me in the face and just started peppering me all over the ring, which was, he was like, I don't know how old he was at the time, probably in his 70s, but he darted across that ring so fast and just was smashing me. It was so funny. Like, who else was really interesting? I'll tell you my least favorite, which was a really big letdown, was Greg Valentine. I think he was just way past wanting to wrestle anymore, but he was still taking bookings, just, make some money.
Yeah.
And he just didn't want to do anything. I felt really bad for that one because I'm a huge Greg Valentine fan, which sometimes that sucks when you wrestle some of the guys you're fans of, but they're much past their prime and they're not there for the love of the business anymore. They're just there because, the payday and...
Yeah. It's funny, too, because Can I tell you a quick story real quick about a name I had to work with but didn't end up working with?
Okay, yeah.
Virgil.
Oh my goodness.
But I was supposed to work with him as in I was going to come out, save him, and then he was going to be my tag team partner, right? And he refused to let me save him. So I literally had to go to the promoter and go, he ain't doing it. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, he told me he doesn't need to be saved. He wants to take out this heel faction by himself.
Oh, wow. See, yeah, I mean, I get where he's coming from. And this is something that I probably never would have taught you because I don't think we've hung out since I really was tour heavy. Mm-hmm. But like on those tours, I learned a lot about people's perception and who makes the money at the merch table. Mm-hmm. And as much as we all laugh at the pictures of Virgil with nobody at his line, I'm sure he understood the perception of fans and who's going to be the most popular guy. In that scenario, you're the good, like you're the big tough guy who's saving him, right?
Right.
And I'm sure he would much rather be saving you, so that he's the badass coming out to scare off all the guys, and you know what I mean, getting that FUCK money, as he likes to talk about. Because yeah, like I get it, man, I get it. That's what I would have suggested if I was there, was to switch it up and have it where you're getting jumped and maybe Virgil makes the save. But
see, this is why I'm asking you if you're going to be a trainer or even a promoter, because you got the mind, man.
Yeah, well, that's just being a shyster. That's just figuring out a way to get a little more, an extra $20 on the merch table. That's what the guys always try to on tour. It's so funny because we have young guys come out and they're doing every indie spot in the world, and the kids are silent. Like they're going ooh and ah once in a while, but after a while they just don't care anymore.
Oh man!
And then you realize, the guy who's selling the most merch is just the guy who they're seeing his face the longest, and he's doing the most talking and stuff like that. It's more just about FaceTime than it is moves and stuff.
Absolutely.
And there's just all these little tricks you can learn and things that you have to do. Like I know there's tons of times on tour where I'm difficult with the way the booking is, because I want to make sure that I'm the coolest, MF around the show, so that I sell the merch money because I'm trying to pay my bills.
Right.
You look at it differently.
Yeah, I mean, it is a business. Like, when it comes down to it, this is a business, and you have to look at it from a financial standpoint for, a lot of the things that we have to do.
Yeah, and it changes too, right? Like, obviously, my friend there, MC Hardbody, who I mentioned earlier, when he came on tour, all he was focused on, because he wasn't doing it to pay his bills, he lived at home with his parents. Mm-hmm. All he was focused on was working on stuff so that when he goes to his AAA tryouts after the tour, he's ready. And that I get too, because that's a different goal, right? It depends what your goals are in the wrestling business or what you're looking to do on those shows. For everyone, it's not paying their bills. So for them, if they just want to work on getting their demo reel so they have something to show on YouTube to promoters, by all means, do whatever's best for you. But for me, at that time on those type of shows, it's definitely about the money. And I could see Virgil on the show you were with. He was only there, obviously, for the money. So, I could see him being a little difficult.
So how many times now in your career have you been called for WWE extra work?
3, I think there were 3 or 4 altogether.
Now, if I remember,
each one was 2 or 3 events, I think.
Oh, okay. So I remember seeing you on television. I believe it was for the Goldberg Brock Lesnar, right?
Yeah, I think that was the second last time I did it.
What was that experience like, going out there knowing that was going to take place? Because those are some big motherfuckers.
Yeah, it's weird. I have a strange thing. I don't know if it's a mental thing or something. I don't get starstruck with really anyone. I think Vince was the one person that maybe got a few butterflies going. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. I think the whole time we didn't see Brock until he was in the ring. Okay. Because he doesn't do that stuff. He gets in there, and as Paul Heyman said before the segment, Brock's going to do what Brock wants to do.
Wow.
That was just, that's just Brock. And so yeah, I remember being in the ring staring across at him, and it wasn't so much nervous as much as just staring at his size. I was just looking at his arms, thinking how ridiculously long his arms were. I was in the middle of the ring, but I felt like he could reach me from the corner. He's just a big gorilla, man. That was the biggest thing I noticed. And the other thing I noticed in that whole segment was how small the arena seemed from the middle when you're looking out. I've never wrestled in front of sold out HSBC Center or anything like that. So looking out, I expected it to look like a sea of people. Yeah. And I realized, it just looks like a few different indie shows running at the same time. You know what I mean? Just groups of people And as I scanned the crowd, I remember, like, I could see Brian Jennings, I could see Blackjack Phoenix, I could see, like, you know, all these different indie workers just standing there smiling, trying to make me laugh or, like, making dumb faces at me. Like, but yeah, that's all I really took away from that, was that it was just weird. It was just a weird experience.
So now with this whole pandemic and everybody, you know, tours aren't happening and things like that, do you have, like, a list of people, or have you ever done this where you're like, okay, when I come back, these are some guys that I want to work? Or do you have like a bucket list going of like, this is some stuff I got to do before I'm done with this?
Not at all. I don't, I'm so far removed now from like actual wrestling, just because I haven't been in the ring. I haven't been able to train. Obviously, I haven't really been, I've done a couple little student shows for Chris Thorne. Yeah. But for the most part, I'm just like, when I wrestled last, I think it was December, and I was so not a wrestler. Like, even when I got there, like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't remember what I do. I couldn't, you know, it's not, for some people, it's like riding a bike. For me, it was like, I don't know, going back to elementary school. It was weird. Like, I just felt out of place, and like I wasn't a wrestler anymore. So, I don't know. I'd have to get back into it first and then see where I'm at. And also with my body, it's just breaking down like crazy with age and weight, that I think I'd have to really focus on getting in shape and getting healthy. And if that happened, then I'd probably start looking more into like, you know, goals and new, you know, dream matches, stuff like that. I've never been a guy who had like dream matches. Obviously, I'd love to wrestle my all-time favorites, but most of them are no longer wrestling, so it doesn't really matter.
Like, those are like legit dream matches. Like, what if?
Yeah, like I would love to have a match with Fit Finley, but I mean, at this stage, it's probably never going to happen. So.
Hey, stranger things have happened in this business. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, you never know.
Just a couple more things before I let you go, but tell me about Good Brother Morning.
Yeah, Good Brother Morning's just it's kind of a new thing, right? We didn't have any shows, so we were always bored, and we had nothing to post online. Remember, I went for a stretch there where I just didn't post anything on Instagram or anything for like months. Actually, I think I went through a point where I deleted my old Instagram, not realizing you can't just sign back in like Facebook. Yeah. And I lost like all my followers. I had like a few thousand followers all gone, and I had to restart. But yeah, I had nothing to post, nothing to talk about, and I'd always liked podcasts. I'm a huge podcast fan from, you know, since probably 2010 when they first started coming out. And I always was a big fan of, before that, Opie and Anthony. Oh, yeah. And just you know, just the hangout. Wasn't so much an interview or a radio show. It was like just a hangout with comedians and stuff like that. And I noticed it reminded me a lot of like being in locker rooms with my buddies, right? Just making each other laugh. And that's exactly what it was. I started out wanting to do that multi-person cast every, like a morning shows type thing, or just a podcast like that. And nobody was available to do it because of the pandemic. I went out and bought all this gear. I had a setup for 4-person, you know, all the mics, all the boom arms, the whole thing looked like Joe Rogan's studio in here.
Yeah, right.
Great. And spent all this money, and then the pandemic is not letting up. Nobody, and I don't know if you know, but Ontario's ridiculously bad right now for like the lockdown stuff. They just won't let us be free.
I've heard.
It's like illegal to hang out with your friends and stuff.
Wow.
So I started doing a solo podcast called What You Talking Boot, which was just me Zooming with like someone individually. And I learned really quickly that like I'm just not I'm not great at doing interviews, and that wasn't why I got into it in the first place. Not why I bought the stuff. So as time went on, I kind of adjusted it and kind of found a groove and got into a zone that I liked with that podcast. But then once we realized we were doing everything on Zoom anyways, I just started doing the podcast with Eric Kearney, Eazy-E. And then we added Joe Dog, and all of a sudden I realized, I'm in the podcast I wanted originally, which was the multi-person cast hanging out, making each other laugh, saying offensive shit. That's what I wanted, and now I have it. And we were doing it Monday to Friday, so now it's so busy that I just basically stopped doing my other solo podcast because I was too busy. So yeah, now that's what we're doing, man. 5 days a week. We usually about a half hour to 45 minutes every morning. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Just look up Good Brother Morning, or if you want to be a subscriber and watch the actual video, because the audio's free, but the video's not, you can go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/goodbrothermorning. It's $6.99 Canadian a month. So for you Americans, that's like nothing. I think it's a cup of coffee or something a month. So yeah, it's fun.
And I will say it is a good show, and I do listen to it, and I skip over the Cyclone Jones one, though, because he's a piece of shit, but, you know.
Oh, dude, we had to delete that one anyways.
I heard about that.
yeah, there's a little heat on that one. Apparently, Look, I'm an ignorant white person, okay? I don't know the rules. So when Ish made a comment about being blacker than another person, I didn't realize the problem with that. That's my white privilege, I suppose. So we posted it, and Ish, he was laughing about it and having a good time. I know he didn't mean nothing by it. But, the person he was talking about was not thrilled about it, and we had to cut that one out. See, that's how stupid I am, and how ignorant I am as a white dude from Canada. I don't. If Ish is laughing at it, I'm like, okay, it's okay, right? Like,
yeah, right.
It's all right. But yeah, so we learned a lesson there. But yeah.
Well, it's a great show. So anybody listening to this right now, subscribe to Good Brother Morning, and you won't be disappointed. So before I let you go, though, plug all your social media. Let everybody know where they could find you, and then plug the show again, and then I'll let you get out of here, man.
Cool. So my social media it's all over the place, man. I don't know. I can't figure out a handle that I can use for everything. So if you look on Instagram, you can go at Good Brother Morning, which is the show's Instagram. If you want my personal one, it's What You Talkin' Boot, which is just from the old podcast. Again, that's probably going to change, so sorry. Twitter, you can find us on Twitter and because Twitter is difficult, you can only have so many characters in your friggin' handle. That one's at Good Bro Morning. So, okay, what do we got? Instagram, Good Brother Morning. Twitter, Good Bro Morning. Look us up on Facebook. You can find me under Rex Atkins, or you can just look up Good Brother Morning. The show's there. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. Again, patreon.com/Good Brother Morning for all the full video episodes of what we do, as well as a bonus Friday show. So the Monday to Thursday audio is free, but the Friday show is only available on Patreon.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this, man. I appreciate it. It was fun to catch up, too. It's been a bit.
Yeah, man. I can't wait till I can get over the border whenever I'm allowed. We're supposed to get vaccines. I think our prime minister here misunderstood. I think because, everything was you have to be 60 plus to get it. I think he thought, you have to wait till you're 60 plus. I don't know what I'm sure by the time I'm 40, I'll have it. But hopefully within the next few years, I'll see you.
Yeah, right. And we have to have, an actual match. I've been in the ring with you many times, and it's been, a 6-man tag or a battle royal or some kind of schmaz finish where we're all in there at the same time. But I've never actually had a one-on-one match with you.
Well, you know what? I can't make any promises, but I'll tell you what, I'll eat one less slice of pizza a day, and I'll try to get in shape for you.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your night.
All right, buddy. See ya. Take care.
All right, rockers, thank you for joining us today. Again, that was Rex Atkins. Make sure you check out his podcast if you can find some of his stuff on YouTube as far as wrestling goes. And, watch out for him when the pandemic comes back, because maybe he will come back, maybe he won't. I guess we're going to have to wait and see and find out. But either way, this interview was a blast. And, I'm very glad that he did it. And I'm pretty sure he was one of the very, very first people I met when I broke into the business. And so it was cool to have him on and just, shoot the shit, because we don't take those trips anymore. But thank you guys for listening. Again, make sure you subscribe. It downloads automatically for you, reminds you to listen to the show, and it helps us out more than you think. So make sure you check that out, and check out my Pro Wrestling Tees store, which also helps keep the podcast going. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the All Bets Are Off podcast.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.